first few minutes as well. The entire process of reforms as far as the Indian Army is concerned was something which was talked about a lot in the throughout the year, and top commanders had also given their go-ahead. So how would you look at this entire reform process and how it might benefit as far as Indian Army is concerned?
You know, this transformation studies ordered by the Army started sometime at the beginning of this year, and they have been deliberated by the Army commanders twice during the year. And these studies, the recommendations are now being evaluated before they are sent to the government, I believe, in the beginning of next year. They are to do with rationalization, reorganization to improve operational efficiency, keeping with the latest doctrines. So it has been talked about that instead of divisions in some sectors, we'll have integrated battle groups of all arms, smaller, tighter, with better command and control, with all the wherewithal that they require to carry out operations. Then there is a rationalization of the organization of Army headquarters, and looking at the terms of engagement of the JCOs and other ranks, including their cadre review. The idea is to save money and to save manpower, not to cut down things or to give it back to the government, but to get more money for capital schemes, for acquiring new weapon platforms and strength for raising additional units for specialized warfare purposes. So this is a work in progress. It's not a milestone of this year per se, because when it comes about and the way it comes about and the measures in which it is implemented will show whether it's a big event. Because in the past we have seen almost 13 studies carried out. The results have not been encouraging. Whatever is within the power of the Army to implement, they have done so. But when it comes to getting the orders of the government to implement some of those important aspects, we fall short. They are not forthcoming. So let's see how this plays out.
Okay, this is something, one aspect which we need to go ahead and keep an eye on. Comrade Dikshit, one more aspect when it comes to Indian force, which was being talked about of the year, was the work in progress on the indigenous fighter Tejas. Be it about Mark II or be it about ISA radars being procured for the LCA. So how do you see Tejas filling in those gaps which you were mentioning in your earlier answer about the overall numbers as far as the fighting squadron strength of the Indian Air Force is concerned?
Vishal, the HAL boss, in a statement made yesterday, said that during this year they will give only 9 Tejas aircraft. The rest will come down the line. And when he's talking about the 1A version out of 83 are being ordered, that is still not being considered for to place an order on HAL. So all I can say that development on that field is uncertain. But I want to make another comment, if I may. You know, when you talked about the Agni 5 and you talked about the utilization of space for special channels for Air Force and the Navy in your last program, let me quickly tell you...
The GSAT-7A which was
Yes,
launched.
sir. I think those are greater achievements for larger space applications. What is happening is that along with the Navy, there's the communication transponders, 40 of them are being placed for the Air Force, and down the line they'll come for the Army. The greater advantages will come in the strategic posture of not merely the Air Force, but all the 3 services. And I think this will add to the larger game plan of creating your own space command, your own cyber command, and your own special operations command, which are being considered all over. About the Agni 5, let me add to your statement to say that those were user trials. The Agni 5 and the SOS series are already under development, maybe for the induction into Strategic Forces Command, which is manned by all the 3 services. That is what is happening. And let the rest of the world take note that we have arrived at that. And we are thus able to neutralize targets as far as 5,000 kilometers away. So on the strategic field, where all the 3 forces join up, I think there is a great activity visible, and that fills my heart to share that notion with you.
Okay. Admiral Sinha, on the Indian Navy's part, it is always being said that when, talk about all three forces and when you look at from the perspective of Make in India or the indigenization, Indian Navy is the one which is, has made a stride ahead of both the Air Force and Army. So in that perspective, how would you describe Indian Navy's achievements as far as this year is concerned, going ahead and making things indigenously?
As I mentioned, Vishal, the Kolkata class ships, fully indigenous. The missile, as I mentioned, it's a joint development between DRDO and the Israeli aircraft industry. So that is one very big achievement that we have made. And if you go and see these destroyers, I had the opportunity to visit one of them very recently. They are actually world-class ships. They can do 33, 34 knots. They can keep an enemy away, an airborne enemy away beyond 70 miles, which is a big achievement. Everything is fully automatic. And it has got an equivalent of an ISAR radar. Nothing is required to be done. It does the scanning, it selects the target, it tracks the target, and it destroys the target. So I think on the indigenous front, it is quite a big achievement.
Okay.
Having said that, even the Scorpion class submarine, as you know, is now being built here in MDL in Mumbai. But on the policy front, there is one big change which has taken place. With the arrival of China in the Indian Ocean region and their collusion with Pakistan, it was being sensed that the maneuvering space for the Navy and so for the whole country in the Indian Ocean is actually going to shrink, because you will have these fellows all over the place, or maybe the places where you didn't expect. So the decision has been taken that, okay, let us monitor the wider space. And in that context, the fusion center which came up in Gurugram the other day, the defense minister inaugurated, that has got a very important significance. 28 countries are part of it. And by saying it is an IOR fusion center, meaning that anybody who thinks that free and open navigation is the order of the day and the rule of the law must prevail, those countries can join this. So that is one. The second thing, big important thing that has happened is, the Navy has decided that it will have mission-based deployment. All the choke points, the Straits of Hormuz, the Gulf of Aden, the Straits of Malacca, the Lombok Strait, the Sunda Strait, at all those straits, we have either a submarine or an aircraft or a surface ship on patrol 24/7. So that's a very big achievement. Now you will say, okay, fine, they have to come back to harbor to take fuel and go back. In that context, the signing of LEMOA, both with the US and a similar one with France, gives us the access to operate from Reunion Island. With Indonesia, we have signed an agreement for Sabang. On the Gulf Coast, we have signed an agreement with Oman for Duqm Port. And I'm sure that in coming days, there will be some signatures in the African coast. So that gives you a very wide area to monitor and expand your strategic space of maneuvering for all services, those who can reach.
Okay.
Otherwise, with China coming in and Pakistan causing up too much, we're getting a feeling that, we are going to shrink in our space. But that has been done away with.
Okay, coming back to the joint exercise and the other exercises part, Air Commodore Dixit pointed out Gagan Shakti, and I'd like to bring in General Arora here. General Arora, like all three forces, Indian Army also participated in a number of exercises, joint exercises with a number of countries. One is, which definitely our viewers would want to know about it, is that what purpose does these exercises serve? And since this year had seen so many of them, how would it have benefited the forces?
See, we have been exercising, we have been doing joint exercises amongst the services, and we have been doing joint exercises with friendly foreign nations, including China. We go to China and the Chinese come here to do these exercises. The purpose of doing exercises with foreign powers is to inculcate friendliness. It is military diplomacy. It is also, one of the purposes is to let them see what they are using. It is a fillip being given to defense exports. The defense exports promotion scheme includes doing joint exercises. And of course, it sends out signals about our friendship with these countries. Within the armed forces, we do joint exercises, particularly because we don't have joint organization or joint command, that is to have better synergy amongst the three services.
Amongst the three services.
And when it comes to doing joint operations, we know each other's SOPs and we follow a common SOP.
Okay.
That is the purpose.
Okay, let's, we're running short of time, but let's look at what the future holds for all three forces and what might be the challenges when we talk about 2019. Let's begin with the Indian Air Force. Air Commodore Dixit, from the IAF's perspective, what do you believe for the next 1 year at least should be the topmost on the agenda as far as the Air Force is concerned? And what is it that is clearly very, very important for the force?
Well, having put their induction programs into the pipeline, I think the Air Force should now build to practice the aspect of jointness, which is very necessary, and that is the fulcrum of the thinking of the Indian Armed Forces. Some efforts have been done. I might as well add, they did an exercise in rapid air mobility, where they lifted 500 tons of load. This is done by Western Command over a 6 hours period. Now, this is an exercise in togetherness with the Indian Army. The Air Force by itself has no meaning, so there is a participation.
The synergy between both the forces.
Also, I might as well add, we are talking about global exercises. Under the aegis of the Shanghai Cooperation, we did an exercise managed by the Russians in which we went along with the Pakistani troops to practice counter-terrorist practices. I think in your program several years ago, programs ago, you have talked about this. That, I think, is a great foreign policy posture. Having said that, let me put it this way, that whilst the Air Force has tried to demonstrate to the Indian milieu and the Indian largely populace that they have built in a capacity for outreach, for joint togetherness, and going to the American mainland for exercises, conducting paratrooping over there, where the troops went from the special forces element of the Indian Army. So there is this practice of understanding the overall role of the Indian Armed Forces and to be an active participant in that process. That is what I see would be probably be looked at in the years to come.
Okay. Admiral Sinha, from the Indian Navy's perspective, now that we have INS Arihant operational and several other ships and frigates being made, what exactly would you see the topmost on the agenda of Indian Navy for 2019?
I'll take off from where Air Commodore Dixit finished. You know, we already have in process the major amphibious exercises when it comes to amongst the services. All three services participate. And what do we practice? We practice in the peacetime to how to manage a disaster, how to mitigate the impacts of disaster, and we go on to our own territories and we go worldwide. Particularly in the Indian Ocean region is going to be very, very relevant. So these exercises have to be sort of more frequent and participation of larger number of forces. In wartime, it's a good thing that you can land your troops in out-of-area contingency, or we have island territories. If there are any doubts about its safety and security, our forces can be landed very, very, very quickly with all three forces combined. So we have a SOP already, and that needs to be rehearsed. When it comes to with the international sort of exercises, where the Navy is a very large participant of so many countries, multilateral exercises, Malabar is one example. The interoperability amongst the nations is a very important thing. But tomorrow, if 2-3 countries have to come together, even to operate in peacetime, and if they don't have the standard operating procedure as to what will be the interoperability processes, those SOPs are being laid down, and this is the biggest achievement of the Indian Navy, along with other countries, that you can operate together without having to bother how will I talk to him, how will I operate, what will be the SOP. So these things have been sorted out, and with many more countries it needs to be done.
Okay.
Japan has to come on board because Japan has got a little pessimist sort of defense posture, but now they are coming out of it, and they will have the aircraft carrier, and we have had a lot of experience of operating the carriers. So I am going to see that, I will think that this needs to be hastened, and I'm sure it will get hastened.
Okay. General, from Indian Army's point of view?
Not only Indian Army, but for all three services, the capabilities that we desire to have by the year 2030 and we all have the long-term perspective plan laid out. If we want to achieve that, we must start allocating more money for modernization, which we are not doing at the present, with the result that it is desirable that we should have 30 to 40% of state-of-the-art futuristic technologies, equipment and platforms, about 30% of contemporary technologies, and maybe do with 30% of legacy equipment or obsolete technologies. This has to be reversed. Right now the situation is not good. We must allocate more. As far as the army is concerned, some steps have been taken, like this year we found the INSAS rifle is being replaced, the bulletproof jackets are being provided, the artillery guns are coming in. But as far as the armor goes, as far as infantry fighting vehicles go, we haven't started the process. Whatever we started had hiccups, and we took 2 steps back. As far as air defense guns go, a large number of them require replacement. So we are running behind our adversaries who are going forward in leaps and bounds to modernize their forces. We must keep that in mind.
Okay, wonderful. So as our panelists have pointed out, these are the major milestones for all the 3 armed forces as far as 2018 is concerned, and what to watch out for in the next year. We'll leave it at that here, but a lot of New Year wishes for all our soldiers, veterans, and all our viewers from me and my team at Rajya Sabha TV. Keep watching RSTV.
Hyderabad, popularly known as the City of Nawabs, located in southeastern part of India, is famous for its rich cultural legacy. A prominent attraction of this modern yet historically and culturally rich city is the traditional Hyderabadi bangle. They are not just symbols of matrimony and accessories for women, but are objects of beauty in themselves. Ask any Hyderabadi and they will definitely say so.
हमने ऐसी चूड़ियाँ कहीं भी नहीं देखी। ऐसी चूड़ियाँ हमें यहाँ देखने को मिलती है और इसकी प्राइस भी एकदम रिजनेबल है। बहुत ही बढ़िया चीज़ है यहाँ पे।
बहुत अच्छी लगी, सब डिज़ाइन अच्छी है। इतनी अच्छी डिज़ाइन हमने कहीं नहीं देखी।
This traditional accessory, generations old, is deeply entwined in Hyderabadi culture, and it has evolved over the centuries from simple glass bangles to modern ones with richly ornamented designs. From molding out the shape by heating and reheating the lacquer that forms the base of these bangles to the intricate embroidery, each step requires elaborate craftsmanship. They are made of various colorful stones or beads that the craftsmen fit in with utmost care and dedication. Making each piece can take anywhere between 10 minutes to 3 hours or more depending on the intricacy of design. Beautifully embellished bangles with colorful beads or pearls exist in abundance and are simply fascinating.
हमारे पास जो माल तैयार होता है फैंसी माल तैयार होता है, ये लोकल माल नहीं होता है। ये जैसा दुबई फेस्टिवल्स है वहाँ पर भी जाता है, लंदन, जापान, जर्मन, ये वहाँ पर भी जाता है। ये नेशनल बेसिस पे नहीं, इंटरनेशनल बेसिस पे माल जा रहा है अभी।
The special bangle market at the world-famous Charminar is the most preferred place for buying these accessories. There are about 450 shops on both sides of the market with around 2,500 craftsmen to mold a variety of magic around your wrists.
ये गोट की चूड़ियों का डिमांड बहुत अच्छा है और ये करीब जो है ना 100 ईयर्स से ही मार्केट है ये टोटल ये। और जैसा आप ड्रेसेस लिखेंगे वही हिसाब से जो है ना बैंगल्स है ना मैचिंग कलर के डिज़ाइन ड्रेस का देख के बना के हम लोग देते हैं, सेट करके जैसे मैचिंग सेट पूरा ऑल ओवर वर्ल्ड के अंदर जो है ना मैन्युफैक्चर इसका यही है। तो कोई भी बाहर का टूरिज्म आएगा, कोई घूमने के लिए आएंगे तो ज़्यादातर ये दिमाग में रख के आता है कि अपन हैदराबाद को जा रहे हैं तो यहाँ पर बैंगल्स लेना है, हैदराबादी बैंगल स्पेशल बोल के।
Shimmering sparkle, tinkling sounds and magnificent colors all go into making the Hyderabadi bangles that are a key component of the city's rich cultural legacy.
Madhya Pradesh holds about 20% of India's tigers, and Kanha and Pench tiger reserves are the two main sources of tigers and are brimming to capacities. But how are the corridors doing in Madhya Pradesh?
We know how critical corridors are for large carnivores like tigers. We have seen substantial population of tigers in Rajaji National Park crumble and die due to lack of connectivity in the corridors. But in Madhya Pradesh, the story is something else. The pressure on the corridors is tremendous, and the future of tigers outside the tiger reserves, bleak. I'm standing at the Pench Tiger Reserve gate and waiting for Chittaranjan from WWF, who have a significant presence in this landscape. Hi.
Hi, Krishnendra. This is the Pench Tiger Reserve and this is Kanha Tiger Reserve.
Okay.
Now we are somewhere here.
So I'll travel with you and we can drive through today and see, you know, what are the
what
hurdles
all
and
we can see. Yeah.
what all we can see. Yeah. And we'll become tigers, going back to Kanha. From Pench. Okay.
The moment I got on the journey with Chittaranjan, the first roadblock we hit was the road itself. From a 2-lane highway, the road fans out into a 4-lane highway. There's a serious proposal for this 4-lane highway to be built all the way back through the Pench Reserve.
So we are entering into the corridor forest now, and the area where we are going is area under this Forest Corporation area.
Barghat Pariyojana Mandal Sevni. Yeah, and then they will plant it with monocultures of teak.
Monocultures of teak.
Forest Corporation is the commercial arm of the Forest Department. They are converting this bamboo forest into a teak commercial forest.
During this operation, there would be lots of disturbance because trucks and tractors are coming, people are inside, they are cutting trees. And then like when people are cutting trees, some of poachers can also mingle with these people and they can remove lots of wildlife from this area.
Smaller
Small herbivores and all. And who knows, I mean tigers also. We are approaching a village. The name Kopi Jola. And if any cattle loss in this area happens, my team runs to the spot and they put camera trap.
ये बड़े दो
पंजे लगे थे, बड़ा वाला
चिल्ला रहा था,
आवाज कर रहा था। अच्छा,
घास उखाड़ रहा होगा, चिल्ला रहा था वो।
अच्छा,
हाँ भैया, टाइगर भगा चुका है।
कैसे?
अभी पकड़ लिया ना, दौड़ा लेता, चिल्लाता है काफी पीछे, भगा देता है टाइगर को।
this corridor is the mosaic of agriculture fields interspersed with forest pockets. So when tiger passes through the corridor, they will pass through the habitation as well.
The tiger travels from one mosaic to the other, and then
it's
this
right.
one, so it has to live on cattle kills.
Cattle
and-
kills. Since there are like 1600,000 cattle in this area, it's a threat for tiger and it's potential for tiger. It depends how you take on. See, this is one of the beautiful forests in the corridor.
Yeah.
This forest on this side, which you see, is Balaghat forest, and it has tremendous potential for tiger conservation.
How many tigers are there?
Maybe 4 to 5 tigers right now.
Right.
There are 12 tigers between Kanha and Pench.
Wow.
And then this particular corridor is being cut by this railway line.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So this is the railway line which is here.
Wow. This cuts across
Look
completely,
at,
huh?
correct. Look at the speed. This is narrow gauge. If you look at think about the broad gauge.
This narrow gauge is proposed to be a broad gauge zone, which means more trains, speed, and more development in this area. So goodbye local forests and local tigers. I will show you 2 videos I came across. These may be a bit disturbing, but it's a reality when fast trains roar through forest. We are approaching our destination, Kanha. Broad metal roads giving way to dust tracks, snaking through the villages, catering to thousands of tourists who visit Kanha every year. The resorts are visible now, choking the entry of Kanha Pench corridor.
Finally, we made it to Kanha from Pench, a corridor of 350 kilometers. We drove for 2 days, and we saw what the tiger negotiates: villages, agricultural fields, corporation forests, railway lines, roads. The good news is that this corridor is still in use. We have identified about 12 tigers which use this corridor regularly, and probably many more who have not been identified as yet. And this probably is one of the best corridors in the country for tigers. But wait, there is bad news, and lots of it: mining, coal mining.
Over 1 million hectares of standing forest is being affected by coal mining. In a damning expose, trashing Tigerland, Greenpeace had raised the red flag over the future of tigers in central India. 13 coal fields will impact 8 tiger reserves. I walked into a war room. The final clearance for one of the coal mining leases in Madhya Pradesh was due any day now, and the Greenpeace activists were huddled, planning their last-minute campaign.
What is the status of CFR?
Nandi was the key activist was handling the coal campaign.
Hi, Nandi. Hi, how are you? So this is Singrauli coalfield, where Greenpeace is actually fighting a ground fight for this particular block called Mahan coal block.
This is the Mahan.
Mahan
okay.
coal block is
Right.
right. And then this red colored mark that is given in the map are actually tiger presence.
Right.
So
How close is the tiger habitat, tiger reserve?
it's about 20 kilometers
20
from
kilometers
Sanjay
from
Zubri.
there, yeah.
Mahan has got stage 1 clearance, Chatrasal has got stage 1 clearance.
And stage 2 clearances are going to come in the next 48 hours,
Yes.
and so you fear.
For Mahan, yes. So this particular letter was written by the ex-minister Jairam Ramesh
Jairam
himself,
Ramesh, yeah,
explaining to project proponent of Mahan why Mahan should not be cleared. Despite that, these companies lobbied with the PMO, lobbied with the other coal ministry and XYZ people to actually get this particular block. So then Jairam Ramesh, they took Jairam Ramesh off the picture and then they diluted the FAC to get actually this cleared. There are file notings of then Minister Ms. Natarajan saying that Mahan, she's clearing Mahan because...
This is really interesting. Hang on, yeah, I've got the file notings of the minister. She says, despite reservations against the diversion of densely forested land expressed strongly by the Ministry of Environment, but in view of the considered decision taken by the group of ministers and the fact that the entire civil work and construction work of the plant is already complete and resulting in huge exposure to the nationalized banks, the Forest Committee's approval may be granted to the Mahan coal block subject to the usual conditions. Look at the insidious ways the mind of the state works, probably in collusion with the industry, when it comes to clear forest lands for mining companies. And they've almost given you the recipe to do it. If you want to mine in the forested areas close to tiger reserves, this is what you do. You sink in 1,000 crores, you build your plant and factories, and then go to the government for approvals. And then they would say, then my God, they've already sunk in so much money. Now if we say no, then the nationalized banks will collapse. We will give out a very wrong signal to the country for economic growth and development. So let's clear it. Do you think these tigers in these areas have any chance of survival? My last stop was Tadoba Andhari Tiger Reserve, TATR, in Maharashtra. In the past few years, this has come up as the #1 tiger hub. It would be interesting to see the relationship of the inside and the outside of Chandrapur district. I hitched a ride with the director.
So roughly TATR core plus buffer is 65.
65 and outside is about
outside
40.
About 35 to 40 must be
tigers.
outside, yeah.
So for 40 tigers, 65 lakhs, and for 60 tigers, 6.5 crores.
Well, the priority, see, it is the project tiger. Basically, it is NTCA's.
Yeah.
Main focus is on tiger reserves.
Yeah.
But now they are realizing that the threat is more in the area outside. And
so basically NTCA gives money to tiger reserves and not necessarily to tigers. Like it's an area, it's a legal status.
It is not based on the number of tigers. So basically it's the carrying capacity because this area cannot sustain more than 50 tigers.
Yeah.
So they have to move out.
Yeah. But these dispersing tigers going outside, there is very little monitoring of these tigers like you do inside the tiger reserves. So if the tigers are being poached or taken out, is there a system to know them unless you find...
These are wild tigers. We cannot, monitoring means we cannot radio collar them.
Yeah.
So it has to be monitored by people, and the tigers are it's not that easy to monitor them from inch to inch. But definitely the core is more protected.
Yeah. It was baffling that the moment the tiger crosses the boundary of a tiger reserve, it loses protection and is left to fend for itself. We have seen that in Corbett Ramnagar and now here. 15 to 20 tigers are born here every year, which means 15 to 20 tigers disperse outside every year. And seems that the highest tiger authority, the NTCA, waves them goodbye. It's like building a fancy shopping mall with a tight parking space. The only difference being, here there is no parking space. But the story doesn't stop at tigers.
When tiger densities increase, leopards are pushed out. I mean, they are pushed out of the prime areas and they have to then subsist in suboptimal habitats. But the leopards are very, very capable of doing that. They're very versatile. And they then depend on human-generated resources to survive, and that's livestock.
So this becomes a bloody cocktail of conflict. A double whammy of sorts. The leopard presence outside of Tadoba has clearly increased, and so has the human-leopard interface. I got into the conflict zone.
On 10th April 2012, at 7:30 in the morning, right at the spot I am standing, a man was killed by a leopard. About 1.5 hours later, a woman was killed by a leopard, right here, and all within about 200 meters from Adai Gaon, which is a village down this road. What we are going to see now is the classical flip side of a successful conservation story of the tigers of Tadoba. When the numbers of tigers increase, there's also a dark side to it. And this story is often untold.
तड़ोवा में बाघ बढ़ रहा है और पर्यटक आते हैं जिप्सी में फोटो लेते हैं वो तो बोल रहे हैं पेपर में भी आता है कि तड़ोवा में बाघ बढ़ रहा है तो अच्छा है काफी
हमारे लिए अच्छा नहीं है ना हमारे खेती में कुछ नहीं पिकता जाने के लिए डर लगता है हमारे लिए अच्छा नहीं है उनके लिए अच्छा है हमारे लिए नहीं देखने के लिए अच्छा लगता है गाँव लोग
की वजह से बढ़ गया नहीं नहीं इतने साल हो गया हमारा पिताजी गुजर गए लेकिन ऐसा घटना कभी नहीं हुआ
और वैसे शेर भी नहीं दिखे
100-200 लोगों के सामने इतना अटैक कर दिया उसने
नहीं पहले नहीं आते थे नहीं जंगल था लेकिन अभी तक शेर नहीं देखा था उस वक्त हम बच्चे थे स्कूल में 8वीं कक्षा तक यहाँ से पैदल जाते थे अकेले भी जाते थे स्कूल में
2-4 दिन हुए इतना सब बछड़ा मारा है उस गाय का फिर हम लोग क्या करेंगे ना स्कूल है स्कूल में जाए कैसे जाएंगे अब तक तो बच्चे पैदल भी जा सकते थे अकेले अब तो कोई भी नहीं जाता साइकिल से भी जाने से डर लगता है लोगों को बाइक से क्या जाएंगे आदमी भी मारे हमारे गाँव के 2 एक औरत और एक आदमी वो तो रास्ते पे ही थे वो औरत तो उसे देखने जा रही थी हम सब लोग मिल के जा रहे थे उस औरत को ऐसी पकड़ी डाली नीचे मर गई वो बेचारी
5,000 heads of cattle and about 30 people have been killed by tiger and leopard attacks in the last 3 years in the Chandrapur district. It is clear that alongside ecological carrying capacities, we need to build social carrying capacities. With a meager 10% budget, it would be intriguing to see how the officers manage the outside.
आपका कोई 60 लाख रुपए बाहर का पूरा
ये तो फर्क है कोर एरिया के या नेशनल पार्क के या प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया के टाइगर जो है थोड़ा सा डेयर होते हैं आदमी देख के वो डरते नहीं खड़े हो जाते लेकिन जो नॉन प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया है वो थोड़ा शाय होते हैं ये उधर के सर ये धाबा के हैं ये धाबा के 3 टाइगर है ये 2 बीबट भी धाबा से ही
ये सब कैप्चर किया
ये हाँ मैन एनिमल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में ये कैप्चर किया
मारा है
ये इन्होंने मारा है
आदमी को मारा है
आदमी को 4 उस टाइम मतलब कम से कम 1 महीना उन्होंने गांव में धुमाकूड़ टाइप का किए थे
लोगों का तो बहुत फिर वो हो रहा होगा।
हाँ,
रोष
फ्यूरियस
और
तो था
गुस्सा
ही,
आ रहा
तो
होगा।
इसलिए
तो ये सारा गाड़ी उलट दिया।
हाँ,
कितने गाड़ियाँ थी?
वो कम से कम 6-7 गाड़ियाँ थी।
चलिए देखते हैं फील्ड में। हाँ आइए, दिखाइए कैसे करते हैं आपके फील्ड स्टाफ।
The officers who manage the outside are usually from the territorial cadre, and managing wildlife is not their priority job, nor are they trained for it. But here in Chandrapur, they are managing 40 tigers. It was indeed an ironical situation. One hand was efficiently fulfilling its mandate by operating the tiger factory, unmindful that it was spewing out new tigers into the conflict zone. The other hand was desperately trying to quell the conflict by monitoring these tigers. And between the two hands, there was almost no connectivity.
मैच द टाइगर्स ट्रेल है। हाँ ट्रेल है। हाँ धर्मा, वो धर्मा मेरे वो कोलीग है, वो हम लोग हाँ ये लाइक टू तो
And we tried our two-bit by strapping our infrared camera, hoping to catch a few tigers on the trail.
Start recording.
My best chance to physically encounter the outside tigers came when I met two rare young people. Kamlesh sold building hardware and Nikhil sold textbooks. And in the night, they were hunters with cameras.
लेपर्ड टाइगर्स और बाकी भी जो नॉक्टर्नल है यहाँ पे काफी बार देखा है.
They would go scanning the back roads of Chandrapur city in the dead of night. And they came back with some amazing photos of the creatures of the dark. This was indeed my chance. And finally I saw it in front of me. Goosebumps. Traveling through the unprotected forest, some of these tigers' fate would be trapped in death. But no one would even ask that how did these tigers land up so far away from their forests?
So what's the one lesson you have learned from your experience of outside the PAs?
No, it's an amazing biology of tigers itself, that if you give them a chance, they will increase very quickly. And all it needs is a site which has the right condition in terms of the habitat and prey, and given the right protection levels and given the political will to conserve such areas. Pilibhit is an example, Ramnagar is an example. The tiger numbers bounce back very quickly. So that gives us a lot of hope.
At the end of my journey, I had more questions and complexities than from where I had started.
This is the vision of tiger conservation today, blurred. What were you thinking when you were drawing up plans to increase the tiger numbers inside the PAs? The question is, do we need more tigers before we can manage the ones we have? Think. Think nuanced and think new ways of conservation. Think, can you include the patience and the tolerance of people who live with the tigers in your new conservation strategies? Think, can you tackle the team bureaucrat and the politician and their project of selling the forest to the mining companies? If you can't do that, then the success of multiplying the tiger numbers is useless. I'm going to leave you with some heart-wrenching images, which is fast becoming a reality of tomorrow. good night, and good luck to the forgotten tigers.
Popularly known as Hermit Kingdom, Ladakh is bounded by two of the world's mightiest mountain ranges, the Great Himalayas and the Karakoram. It has plenty to offer to everyone. In recent years, river rafting in Ladakh has become an attractive option to complement sightseeing and features on the itinerary of most visitors. Indus is one of the most scenic whitewater rivers in the region. It provides tourists with whitewater rafting and camping options in absolute wilderness.
This water is very fast compared to what we're used to. It's usually very steep and rocky where we come from, so this is nice to get your paddles in some good water. It's very awesome.
The stretch between Spituk and Nimmu or Saspol is ideal for the professional rafters, and one from Spituk and Karu is ideal for beginners. Passing through densely forested mountains and through steep gorges, a trip down the river is one of the best ways to have a view of the splendid countryside in all its glory. No wonder more than 10,000 foreign tourists come to Ladakh, especially for river rafting every year.
I think it's a great adventure activity for tourists. So this allows you to get out and see nature and enjoy the river and have a good time as well.
The thrill of emerging triumphant over the swirling waters is a feeling unmatched by any other.
Along with the brick, stone and mortar, one of the earliest materials used in buildings in India appear to have been wood, but little has survived the passage of time and rigors of the climate. However, there are still a few places across India where we can explore the technique and intricacy of indigenous wooden architecture. And this is where we journey today. In today's episode of Building Blocks of Bharat, we will explore the evocative Padmanabhapuram Palace in Kerala, the Kathkuni work in the hills of Himachal, and the woodwork in the unique wooden Havelis in Gujarat, Abar area. Our destination is exquisite, the Padmanabhapuram Palace. One of the old palaces in Kerala and once the residence of the royal family of Travancore. This area is now incorporated into the state of Tamil Nadu. However, all buildings in this palace precinct except the royal stone oratory were constructed of wood in the West Coast style of Kerala. Padmanabhapuram means a city born from a lotus flower, and the structures within the Padmanabhapuram Palace are dated around 1400 to 1500 CE. The palace is one of the oldest, largest and best preserved example representative of traditional wooden architecture in India. The palace has been built according to the rules of the traditional building code, the Taku Shastra, which means the science of Taku or carpentry. This is a unique system of traditional timber architecture that evolved out of the religious and astrological principles in Kerala. For example, it advocates building with locally available material. And so, this structure is made from locally available wood with a little laterite, a locally available building stone, which was used very minimally for plinths and for a few select walls. The palace has an intriguing blueprint. It takes us through a series of courtyards that works as links between the public spaces on the periphery to the more private spaces in the core. Before exploring wooden structures in more detail, let us look at the advantages and disadvantages of working with wood.
See, if you look at the structure of the wood under a microscope, it's such a fascinating thing because looking at those tracheids, vessels, fibers, the strong cells, we call these fiber cells as. So they give a lot of properties to this wood. They make it very tough but flexible. They make it strong but easy to work at. So all these elements are biological things, and these are subject to degradation, natural degradation over a period of time. It can catch fire easily because it's a combustible material. Because it's a biological material and insects can invade, termites can spoil it over a period of time. So that is one important factor.
Understanding the structure of wood will give us a perspective on these structures. The wood is made up of xylem and phloem tissues. Xylem helps transport the water while phloem conducts food through the plant. The phloem, which can be found just inside the bark, is a softer tissue. There is another layer called cambium. Older xylem forms the darker grained wood known as heartwood, while the younger, more active xylem is lighter in color and found closer to the bark. It is known as sapwood. Wood is divided into two distinct kinds called hardwood and softwood. Though confusingly, the names don't always refer to its actual hardness or softness. Hardwoods are the ones that come from broad-leaved deciduous trees. They are not necessarily harder. They are the most commonly found trees in India, like sal and teak, that make up much of the timber used in the country. Softwoods, on the other hand, is the term used for conifers. In India, we usually find these restricted to the Himalaya and include such species as pine and deodar. Let's get back to the palace. As we walk through, we arrive at the center of the complex, the Thai Kottaram, literally the generic mother palace. This is a double-storied traditional Naluketu, which means a house with a central courtyard, with rooms on all four sides. It has a mortar-less chiseled granite base, timber superstructure and steeply sloping timber roof covered with terracotta roof tiles. All the other spaces are organized around this. There are separate halls for audience and gatherings, a large dance hall, feeding halls of various sizes, kitchen, residences for the king and other dignitaries, weapon store and bath houses. The imposing Padipura or main gate displays exquisite woodwork and leads to the Paumukham or the main reception with traditional gabled entrance and ornamentations. The wooden ceilings and carved granite pillars with floriated corbels are samples of excellent craftsmanship. The Mantrashala or the council chamber on the first floor of the reception hall has features like wooden lovias to admit air and light that helps maintain a pleasant temperature indoors. Another interesting structure in the complex is the four-storied Uprika Mallika, or King's Restroom, constructed in the 1740s. This includes the treasury chamber on the first floor, Maharaja's resting room on the second floor, and the revered prayer room on the third floor, the walls of which are replete with traditional mural artwork, so specific to Kerala. The Tekke Kottaram, literally the palace in the south, has elaborately carved wooden pillars, door beams and ceilings. The carved doors and pillars, the arching wooden grills along the veranda, the exquisitely carved brackets supporting the veranda, the large bay window called the Ambari Mukhapu or the howdah-shaped window are some of the unique features of the palace. Let us explore the techniques that created all of this. So how does wood work as a building material? If you look at some freshly cut wood under a microscope, you'll see it's made up of cells, like any other plant. There are parallel strands of cellulose fibers along with amorphous structure of hemicellulose. And these are held together by a lignin binder. Broadly speaking, cellulose is the fibrous bulk of a tree, while lignin is the adhesive that holds the fibers together. These long chains of fibers make the wood exceptionally strong. They resist stress and spread the load over the length of the board. Furthermore, cellulose is tougher than lignin. It's easier to split a board with the grain separating the lignin than it is to break it across the grain separating the cellulose fibers. So, physically wood is strong and stiff, but compared to a material like steel, it's also light and flexible.
The composition of these biomolecules varies from species to species, but basic there will be a plant material which is rich in lignin. There will be some timber material which has more of cellulose. So the composition varies from species to species, and it is this composition which tells us what use we should put the wood to. For example, there are certain species which you can use for paper making. Then there are certain species which you can only use for fabricating material in the boards. You cannot directly use them for construction. You take small slivers out of these and fabricate them in the boards and then use them.
Let us move towards our next location in Gujarat. We are driving through Gujarat to reach a small village called Vaso. Vaso is not a particularly famous spot, but we are heading there since it is home to unusual, intricately carved wooden havelis. They showcase an ancient tradition of woodwork for which very little evidence remains, since so many old wooden structures have vanished over time. There are elaborate manuals, even poetry that was written about constructing houses in wood all through the Middle Ages, especially the 13th and 14th century. Let us explore one of these havelis in detail. A typical haveli of Gujarat has a central place called chowk or the open court, from which many rooms open and where the household gathers. A room for grain storage protected the family from the hazards of famine and drought. The utlo or front veranda is also common. Another classic feature in these havelis are engraved brackets and carvings over the facades, many adorned with wooden sculptures of flying apsaras and mythical animals. Even the struts generally have filigree-like work, while the doorways are the works of art. The woodwork of Gujarat, both in quality and quantity, is very rich. Curiously though, wood was not a locally available material and was always imported into Gujarat from different timber-producing regions. This was largely due to its enterprising business community, which was able to source material both through sea and land trade. Another use of wood is also in the handles of many of these tools. This is because wood is light, has durability as well as certain degree of resilience to absorb the shock of repeated blows. So the Gujarati craftsmen worked wood into various components of the building. The columns, ceilings, struts, doors, windows, balconies and beams, all transformed into veritable works of art. Having explored all this, it's interesting to see the properties of wood that make all of this possible. When we look at metals, plastics and ceramics, they tend to have a fairly uniform inner structure, and that makes them isotropic. They behave exactly the same in all the directions, whereas wood is anisotropic, which means a lump of wood has different properties in different directions. That's not just important to someone chopping the wood in woodshed. It also matters when you are using wood in construction. Traditional wooden buildings are supported by huge vertical poles that transmit forces down into the ground along their length parallel to the grain. That's a good way to use wood because it generally has high compressive strength. Not all woods are the same. However, many oaks have much higher tensile strength than many other woods, which is why it was traditionally used to make heavy beams in old buildings. Now we are going to take a quick detour away from the wood to examine a few other structures in India which are made from stone but look uncannily like wood. Let's take a look at one example, the Barabar Caves, which are located around 20 to 25 kilometers north of Gaya, Bihar. They comprise of numerous temples constructed from black granite stones. What makes these unusual is that these caves were carved to look like wood from a distance. How was this done? The craftsmanship of the time must have learned to mimic the texture, grain and structure of wood using stone. They crafted living rock to imitate timbered wood. Quite remarkable, right? We end our journey winding through the beautiful mountain paths of the Himachal Pradesh. The slopes of those mountains are rich in conifers such as deodar, pine and cypress. Almost 64% of the land is covered with forests, and so these trees become a key ingredient for the beautiful architecture in this area. Deodar wood is also very durable and is insect-proof, which makes it a good building material. The architectural technique used in this area is known as Kaat Khuni. It uses a mix of deodar and slate, a locally available stone. And across the area, in the mountain houses, palaces and temples, the interplay of wood and stone becomes almost an art form. In the Kaat Khuni buildings in Himachal, each building is erected on a plinth of stone that gives the building a heavy foundation. The walls alternate layers of wood and stone with an infill of rubble to close gaps. There is no mortar used to cement all this together. Gravity is the glue that holds the building together. A big benefit of this dry masonry is the flexibility of the stacking, which allows walls to adjust to the foundation. Since the sides of the stone slope slightly inward, any ground movement locks the structure more tightly together. This is important in earthquakes when the building must move with the shifting ground. This becomes very relevant since this area is also earthquake prone. Often, as the construction proceeds vertically, the stone decreases, until ultimately the structural wall consists of wood frames stacked atop each other. The building is capped by a roof of slate shingles, each nailed to the wooden framework at a single pivot point. Most of the buildings are a couple of stories high. The lower stories are used for cattle and the higher stories for living purposes. The upper stories often have cantilevered balconies. These have wooden supports that rest on the wall. Himachal's extreme climate means that local building has to conserve heat and disperse snow. Hence the small doors and windows, extended balconies, and steep sloped roofs of vernacular structures.
Wood is an insulator, so you are kind of protected inside an environment. Even if there is thunder, lightning, it won't conduct the current. It's a good insulating material. Then it's one material which resists the temperature fluctuations. So it doesn't get heated up like your tiles and marble during summers. It doesn't get that cold also during winters.
What is interesting about Kathkhuni construction is that it requires neither highly skilled builders nor specialized tools. It can also be built in stages depending on access to materials, labor and weather. If one looks at the layout of a typical village in this area, usually the temple lies in the center or at the highest point. The temples are similarly constructed as the homes, but usually taller. The walls here too have patterned timber and stone pattern topped up with a slate roof. Let us visit one temple in this region to see how it is built. The 4-story wooden temple stands in the midst of a sacred cedar forest, near the town of Dhungri at the verdant foot of the Himalayas. It is believed that Hidimba, the temple deity, was one of the wives of Bhim, one of the 5 Pandava brothers in the Indian epic Mahabharata. The temple was constructed in 1553 by Maharaja Bahadur Singh. This temple is rather unusual architecturally. It is about 24 meters tall and consists of 3 square roofs clad in timber tiles, surmounted by a cone-shaped 4th roof that is covered in brass. The base of the temple is made of whitewashed, mud-covered stonework. The main doorway includes an elaborately carved wooden entrance that is believed to be over 400 years old. These and other carvings center on the goddess Durga, who is a mainstay of the pan-Indian stories. However, the goddess herself is represented only once in 3-inch tall brass image. It is fascinating exploring the architecture of this area. The aesthetic is so beautiful that the colors of building almost merge with the landscape. Draped along the contours of the mountains, they almost seem to be organically grow out of the countryside. The wood and stone come together to create an expression that epitomizes the land and its people. Wood, wood, wood. Fascinating structures, historic forays, long journeys. We have travelled through Gujarat, Himachal and the southern tip of India in our search for the most wondrous wood architecture our country has to offer. Let these moments, images and flavors seep in before our next sojourn in search of the connect between science and architecture.
"77 years old, Ram Bali Singh had close ties with technology throughout his career. He retired as warrant officer from Indian Air Force 23 years back. These days, he spends time with a newly acquired smartphone, trying to decipher new age technologies through its features. He purchased this new smartphone from the funds he received under One Rank One pension scheme. For lakhs of ex-servicemen like Rambali, it's an outcome of decades-long battle. An elated Rambali credits OROP for his newly elevated socio-economic status in the society. He articulates long-term benefits for the defense forces that may accrue with this landmark scheme.
हमारे पेमेंट 10 गुना बढ़ गए। आज हम जहाँ चाहें विदेश तक घूमने जा सकते हैं, कोई दिक्कत नहीं होती, बल्कि हम घूम के आए भी, सिंगापुर वगैरह घूम के आए हम ORP मिलने के बाद ही। तो मैं तो धन्यवाद ही करूँगा सरकार को। आज तक जितनी पहले 30-40 साल से लड़ाई चल रही थी, लेकिन ये हो नहीं पाया था और ये हो गया, तो हम तो बहुत शुक्रगुजार हैं इस सरकार।
The NDA government announced implementation of this much delayed and needed pension reform from 1st of July 2014. It pushed the defense budget for pensions from rupees 54,000 crores to around rupees 65,000 crore, an increase of about 20% in the defense pension outlay.
The government has taken a decision to implement the OROP.
The central government since then has also paid rupees 11,000 crore as arrears.
मिल गया तो बराबरी मिल गई। एक जवान की पेंशन डबल से भी ज़्यादा हो गई, क्योंकि आजकल जो जवान रिटायर होता है उसकी पेंशन डबल से ज़्यादा थी, तो पुराने वालों को लाके उसके बराबर कर दिया। इसीलिए मैं कहता हूँ सेटिस्फेक्शन लेवल बहुत ज़्यादा है।
OROP is a long-standing pension reforms demand of the Indian Armed Forces. It would allow same pension for same rank